When a few people get together to share a hobby, the rules are usually pretty simple. The group grows and links together naturally, relying on shared interests to keep things moving. Decisions in those early days are usually made by consensus. Everyone gets a say, and because the stakes are low, figuring out who runs a meeting or plans an outing is quick and easy. But as membership expands, operations get complicated. The group starts collecting dues, signs contracts for event spaces, and officially incorporates as a registered nonprofit. Suddenly, you have formal legal and financial liabilities. This creates immediate friction. Veteran members want to keep the casual, inclusive traditions that built the group in the first place. Meanwhile, the current leadership feels crushed under the weight of administrative gridlock and personal legal exposure. Navigating this transition forces a hard choice. The club has to decide whether to prioritize maximum representation on every decision or establish clear boundaries to secure fiduciary safety. The central question for expanding clubs usually comes down to one specific issue. Should operational volunteers, like committee chairs, hold executive voting power? This matrix maps two approaches. Model B, the expanded board, gives committee chairs full voting power alongside officers, maximizing volunteer inclusion. Model A, the streamlined board, reduces governance to the 4 elected officers, isolating legal liability, aligning fiduciary duty, and speeding up voting. Rewriting bylaws to shift from an expanded board to a streamlined one forces the club's legal structure to finally catch up with its operational maturity. Shifting to that streamlined model requires the most difficult bylaw change a club can make, removing executive voting rights from committee chairs. On an expanded board, administrative votes often stall. You have a large, fluctuating group of unelected appointees weighing in on complex budgets and legal compliance, slowing down decisions that require swift action. The structural fix is to designate committee chairs as advisory, non-voting members of the board. They still attend meetings and submit reports, but they do not cast administrative votes. This creates a necessary legal firewall. It guarantees that only the officers directly vetted and elected by the full membership hold the legal risk and fiduciary liability for the organization. The immediate trade-off is friction. Dedicated operational leaders will likely feel their influence is diminished, and they may interpret the move as a corporate power grab by the officers. You mitigate this by giving those committees total operational autonomy. Once the board approves a budget line item, the committee chair has complete freedom to manage their specific programs, select speakers, and run events without board interference. Separating governance from operations protects your volunteers from legal risk while preserving the creative freedom they need to make the club enjoyable. Beyond the committees, a club's bylaws also dictate leadership continuity, specifically regarding the immediate past president. Many clubs have an informal tradition of granting the outgoing president an ongoing executive vote, usually to maintain institutional memory and guide the new leadership. This creates structural problems. It acts as an unofficial third term, keeping lingering influence on the board and undermining the authority of the newly elected president. Updating the bylaws addresses this by enforcing strict 2-term limits on all officers and shifting the past president into a purely advisory, non-voting role. This forces healthy succession planning. It eliminates indefinite incumbency and requires the club to actively mentor new leaders rather than relying on the same voices year after year. The cost here is a temporary loss of institutional memory. During transitional years, the board won't have the safety net of the previous president's formal vote to steer the ship. True organizational stability comes from building resilient systems for new leaders to step into, rather than depending indefinitely on the influence of past ones. The clash between legal compliance and informal tradition is perhaps most obvious in something incredibly mundane, the club's official physical address. Grassroots groups typically use a rotating board member's personal home address for all club business and mail. This split screen shows the dual compliance problem. For California nonprofits, state filings explicitly forbid using a standard P.O. box. On the federal side, the Can-Spam Act requires a valid physical postal address on every digital newsletter you send to your members. Relying on a member's house means that every time an election happens, you have to file updated state forms, change the address on the bank accounts, and expose a new volunteer's home address to public records. The solution is securing a commercial mail receiving agency address, like a UPS store mailbox.
It provides a permanent, legally compliant street address that satisfies both state filing laws and federal email regulations, keeping the members' homes out of it entirely. You trade a small monthly financial cost for permanent administrative continuity and the personal privacy of your board members. The idea of a fully inclusive board where everyone votes sounds romantic, but in practice, it results in endless administrative meetings where people debate minute details and nothing gets accomplished. For members who want to preserve tradition, a streamlined board does not destroy grassroots culture. It organizes it, giving committees the space to focus on the club's activities rather than on governance. Formalizing these rules builds the legal shield necessary to protect the club's future operations. To decide which governance model your club actually needs, we can map it out on this chart, looking at organizational maturity against the required rigor of governance. Down in this quadrant is the informal group. If you are a small, unregistered neighborhood club with no assets, Model B, the expanded consensus-driven board, works perfectly well. But up here is the registered nonprofit. You are handling tax exemptions, managing budgets, and carrying liability insurance. If your club operates as a legal nonprofit, you must transition to the streamlined officer-only voting board. The operational rule that bridges the divide is simple. Committees manage the fun, and the board manages the risk. Sacrificing universal representation for strict fiduciary accountability is the necessary price for long-term organizational survival.